Gun shop employees of Reddit, what are some red flags that have caused you to deny a sale of a firearm? Serious. Guy comes and wants to get his first gun. Talk to him about rifles, shotguns, and handguns, but is certain he wants a pistol. Spend about an hour showing, talking, explaining. By the end he has come to the decision of a Glock 19. Not the most expensive gun, not the cheapest either. Start paperwork, but his address doesn't match his license. Form states that it must be a valid government issued with a valid address. Tell him he has to get license changed. Well, the online deal says he needs a new photo. Goes to DPS, gets address change plus photo, and comes back like 3 days later. Finish background check and start talking about ammo. Decides he wants a box of self-defense and 2 boxes of range ammo. Got to the money part and was short $20. Went to the bank to get some more cash. Finished the transaction, left, and seemed excited to go shoot. Next day we get a call to let us know that night he had killed himself. Went through all that time, all the effort, could have bought less ammo or a cheaper gun. Just goes to show that sometimes there are no red flags to see. Edit. On an actual red flag story, we had a guy come in who seemed drunk. No smell of alcohol on his breath, but slurred words with a bit of off-balanced. Wanted a shotgun for home protection. Was just him. His wife divorced him recently. So just him. Alone. Is it a felony to bounce a check? We got 3 big red flags for a strikeout. He passed the background check, but at any time we can choose to not sell anyone anything if we feel the need to. Told him we was denied and it was probably in his best interest. Gave his check back after he asked if we would write him a new one. So partial concern for the guy's well-being, partial scam attempt. I have an FFL and have worked many gun shows as well as a couple of small stores, both before I had my FFL and after. 99% of the time, the biggest red flag is body language, how the person acts, and how they carry themselves. It is easy to spot many heavy drug users, especially meth users, and they are always denied. I was working at a small gun shop and had a young guy, maybe 22 or 23, asking about a pistol. Something felt off, but nothing that immediately set off a red flag. He asked to see a Kel-Tec 9mm, and when I handed him the pistol he immediately pointed it at me and pulled the trigger. When it went click he said too bad it was not loaded. Not only did I not sell to him, the person behind him was an off-duty cop. I learned that when a customer does that it is still considered assault with a deadly weapon. Lol. I worked at a pawn shop that sold guns. Had a clearly angry man come in one day asking to buy a gun. Okay, sir. What are you looking to get? If we don't have it, I can probably order it. He responded with, I don't care, anything. Nope, you aren't getting shoot, buddy. He threatened to call the cops. I told him to go ahead and he left. Wasn't working at the store at the time, but here goes. 2 individuals came into the store and requested to see the cheapest handguns the store had in stock. The salesperson was showing them the lower priced handguns and the customers were picking pistol after pistol based on cost. If it was around $400 they wanted it. The owner was listening to the conversation and was suspicious of these 2 individuals. Eventually the owner goes into the back to call the ATF after giving the salesperson the signal to slow everything down. The owner called the local ATF field office and they say they don't have the ability to make it down in time and ask the owner to call the police to handle it. Owner calls a local detective who frequents the place and informed him of the situation. The detective says slow the sale down. I'll call you when I'm in the parking lot, but allow the sale to go through. The detective calls 5 minutes later and tells them he is in the parking lot with a few marked cars and let the sale complete and exit the business. Once in the parking lot the officers question them, find a bunch of other new handguns in their car and arrest them. A few days later the ATF comes in to get copies of the federal documents they filled out. They tell the owner the 2 individuals were going through the state buying as many pistols as possible with the intent of bringing them to NJ to be put on a shipping container headed for Somalia. The agent said the funds used to purchase the firearms are legal, so he can keep it, as the guns were evidence now. Instructor for a hole in the wall joint here. Saw a dude's probation officer's business card in his wallet. Had a possibly homeless woman ask for a little gun, not like to kill anybody, but just to teach them a lesson. On the second story, kind of makes you wonder how many lives have been saved because someone was being stupid. Like if she had known to keep her mouth shut, she may have just gone and killed the guy, or maybe he would have killed her. I worked at a larger sporting goods store, so when I came in for my shift, I had to finish with this old guy's paperwork. He starts telling me about the gun and how he can't wait to shoot it. So I look at the paperwork and a woman applied to buy the gun. Big red flag, and he told me that his wife was filling out the paperwork. He told me it doesn't matter who signs for the paperwork. Huge red flag, so I talked to my manager about cancelling the sale. Then the guy stormed off super pissed, but they said he'll probably do it again at another store. I work at Field & Stream and have sold firearms for a collective 2 years now. I had one guy who came in all strung out. He was looking for a pistol gripped shotgun to take care of some business. I took it upon myself to see what this business was. He then tells me that he has to take care of his girlfriend's husband because he owed him drug money. All he offered for ID was a TWIC card. That was an easy turn down, but he didn't end up being too happy about it. Another guy I had come in on Black Friday wanting to buy a Ruger LCP for his wife. Well, nothing illegal there, because if you are under the same household then it isn't technically a straw sale. Anyways, the guy wanted the LCP and handed me a Florida driver's license. I'm in Alabama, so I can't transfer a handgun across state lines. 2 hours later, a male walked in and said that he was told by his friend that you can't transfer handguns across state lines, so he wanted to purchase it himself. Well, that's not the wife he said he was buying for, nor was it anyone related to him. Insta straw sale and shut him down. The previous guy came in and started screaming at me. They left with our security guy pushing them out. When I first got out of high school, I worked in a pawn shop as the guitar and drums guy. I was there to do music and stereo sales and clean up, but every now and then I would have to work the gun counter. I grew up around guns, know the difference between a shotgun and a rifle, got the NRA gun safety certification when I was a kid, all that. I was a lot happier slinging guitars, though. The gun department had 3 kinds of regular customers: off-duty soldiers, military town, weird old collector dudes, and bikers. I would later find out the bikers were running stolen guns through our shop and the regular gun guy was playing fast and loose with the ATF forms, but that's another story for a different day. One day I got stuck behind the gun counter and this young couple with a kid came in. Little baby in his mother's arms, father looking at stereo equipment. He wanders over to the gun counter and starts eyeballing the pocket rockets. She bouncing the baby, trying to look unconcerned, but when he asks to see this little bullshit raven, 32, she sucks teeth and looks away. He seems to be kind of doing it to annoy her, playfully, but she's not having it. I check to ensure that the weapon is clear, pop out the mag and hand it to him. He says, "Hey, girl," to get her attention, then points the gun at her and the baby. Motherfucker, I nearly lost my mind. I calmly asked if he could hand me the pistol. I put it back in the display case, locked it, and told him that I was sorry, but that it'd be unable to sell him a firearm. I told him that he could go anywhere else and buy a gun, but that what I'd seen him just do was how people end up in the newspaper. He blew a little steam at me, but I think she was grateful, and they left. TL. Doctor, young family came into my shop. Dad took less than 5 seconds to break the first rule of gun safety. I sent him on his way W/no gun. I work at a gun range as an RSO for the FWC, and while we don't sell firearms, the only 2 people I've ever had to turn away were: 1. Guy wanted to rent a shotgun, so is it okay if I have multiple felonies? 2. Guy wanted to rent a shotgun. Okay, sure, just need an ID. He hands me a women's ID. Sir, this isn't your ID. UHH, sir, I need your ID on file until you're finished renting. You don't need my ID. Well, then I can't let you rent a shotgun. What? That's stupid. You can't have my ID. I'm not letting you look at it. Okay. Storms out, were pretty confident he either had felonies or was planning to steal the gun with a fake ID. There was a guy that came into the shop I worked, and after filling out the paperwork my coworker started rattling off some questions. Are you buying this for yourself? etc etc. One of the questions asked if the purchaser is a fugitive from the law, and the guy says yes. So my coworker repeats the question and he says yes again. My coworker says, so you're a fugitive? And he goes, yeah. Why do you think I'm buying the gun? Coworker says, you know I can't sell you this, right? And he goes, oh. Well then can I leave? Before anyone could say anything else, an off-duty cop pulled out some cuffs and goes, no you cannot. I've turned away people for drugs/alcohol, just being kind of a weird guy. On Christmas Eve, while running the range portion of our facility, a guy came up and asked to rent a rifle and asked if he could purchase a single bullet because he didn't need the others. Turned him away for that. Once while I was working the gun counter at a Big Five, some guy asked if he could buy just a couple of bullets. I don't need the whole box, just a few. I noped the frick out of that request. Just a few months after that I quit Big Five and picked up a gig working the gift bar at Sportsman's Warehouse. It's the area where you can get useless Chinese made camo themed tchotchkes and some useful stuff, binoculars, GPS and more relevantly knives. So I'm working the knife counter and this guy walks up and tells me I need a knife a bad guy would use. What's more is I can't tell if he is a really rough looking teenager or a scrawny white guy in his mid-20s with an affinity for dressing like a cholo. No judgment. It's a legitimate lifestyle choice. He also, and this is key, is wearing jewelry made out of cardboard, legit string and white cardboard colored with crayons. I'm fairly determined at this point I don't want to be involved in any way in providing a sharp object to this guy. I start asking some questions and the guy explains that he is working on a TV show and they are filming this part where the bad guy needs to threaten the main character. The director wanted to use a knife as it was more personal and fit with the personality of the bad guy. He assured me the knives would be blunted and used for prop purposes only. The situation makes a lot more sense at this point and I go about making some suggestions. Sportsman's didn't really carry much in the way of tactical style fixed blades, so I ended up selling him to larger Spanish made hunting knives. I convinced him that a discerning bad guy of wealth and sophistication would appreciate the packer wood handles and fine finish. And this is how Tuco ended up sniffing meth off an 8-inch Mula Magnum on season 1 episode 4 of Breaking Bad. FFL here. I had a lady come get a Glock 40 she had transferred into my shop. It was a hit point. 380. A quick convo found out it's for her boyfriend Hoss in the car and can't own a gun BC has a felon. ATF HQ for our city is 2 miles away. I told her I had to check something in the back and called them. They got there real quick. My girlfriend's dad owns a gun store and just told me some guy came in just today to kill his neighbor's cat and all of the kittens. Needless to say he was kicked out. I was helping a friend work a gun show. Friend is an FFL. This guy was walking around the show and he had that aura of shifty. It wasn't any single thing. It was the way he walked, the way he was dressed, just a whole number of things. But still, I told myself not to prejudge. He walked up to our table, saw a gun he liked, and asked about the price. I told him how much it was. Then he asked if we would do a private sale. He was effectively asking us to waive the background check. I simply said, no. That solidified my initial judgment of him, so I told the other guys in the booth about him, in case he came back and tried to talk his way into a sale. The FFL told me that instead of simply saying no, I should have said, why? Are you a felon? I had a guy who didn't know how to spell his middle name, or the city he lived in, and was born in. Straw purchase attempts were always common. When the guy asking all the questions goes and sits in the car while the other asks to fill out the paperwork is a big red flag. White supremacy tattoos, clothing, jewelry etc. And making thinly veiled threats about blood traitors me apparently. Stumbling into the store shoot faced /stoned/tweaking. admitting to felony assault, but it was so long ago. Admitting to being in court for domestic violence, I haven't been charged, yet my lawyer said I could get one. Or admitting they just crashed their car and fled the scene and needed to get a pistol, so the police couldn't get them. And my favorite, guy walked in and wanted to buy two FN57's fairly expensive pistols. He had a valid concealed handgun permit, license and credit card. He finished his paperwork, paid, and then began telling me how cell phone towers are actually mind-controlled devices that use the nanomachines and fluoride put into the air by chemical trails to create a mind-controlling fog, which also explained it was so foggy during the election. He knew this because he worked for the CIA and Illuminati in the 70s. Edit. For clarity, these are all separate examples. Sorry for any confusion. This has been a good read. Considering yesterday was my first day on the job selling firearms at a store. I don't work at one, but was told a story by an employee of a gun store while my friend was picking up some mags for his R. Apparently some dumbass actually came in to buy a rifle, provided all of his information legitimately, and while the employee called the sheriff's office, he was informed that the potential buyer had a warrant out for robbery. He had to act like he was going through the usual process and keep the guy in the store while a few cops were on their way to arrest him. Criminals are freaking stupid. Turned away a few sales. Mostly people who reeked of marijuana, or would ask for clarification on the marijuana question by saying, "Does it count if I have a prescription though?" One time, I was beginning my shift and a fairly attractive young woman came in. Naturally, in the firearms industry, we didn't get too many women coming in, let alone any that looked attractive. Needless to say, she got plenty of customer service. Eventually she starts talking with one of the younger associates about buying a .22 caliber rifle. She knew the name, but didn't know anything else about it. He directs her to the specific rifle and then begins on the paperwork. Something just seemed off about her. I politely inquired to her about her interest in the gun, what drew her to that particular model, etc. None of her answers seemed very genuine or knowledgeable. It was just a huge red flag for me. The other associate continued processing the paperwork, either out of inexperience or just jaded by this girl's attractiveness. I excused myself from the conversation and went to speak with the manager privately. I told him the situation and put it in his hands. He came over and looked at the girl and mentioned that she looked familiar. After a few moments, he recalled that she and her boyfriend came in a few weeks ago trying to buy that exact same rifle, but was denied through the NICS system. We then approached her and told her that we believed she was buying the gun for another person and that we would be terminating the sale. We watched as she nervously walked out across our parking lot into the adjacent Walmart lot and got into a vehicle with, you guessed it, the felon boyfriend. They sped off immediately after. We called the other gun stores in the nearby area to alert them about this couple. We found out later they tried the same deal at another store 20 minutes away. When I was buying my gun, some guys came in the shop wanting to sell some rifles. The store owner, who I was in a conversation with at the time, walked over to them by the door. They refused to come into the store. They just stood in the doorway. They talked for literally about a minute. I heard one of them say this part was custom and that was custom. Then they left, and the store owner comes back over and says, yeah, those guns were hot. I don't want any of that. I kinda thought the same, just from their body language. Trying to buy it for someone else. It's fine when it's a gift, but it's obvious when it's a store purchase, when they are telling them they'll pay them the extra money over what they already gave them. Sorry, man. Can't do it. Finally, something I can answer. I've had several convicted felons try to buy guns from me at gun shows. Don't know why they thought there are no background checks at gun shows, but anyways. One of them was a younger black guy that also had more charges pending. I just told him the background system was running slow today and to walk around and check back in with me in a few. Then I talked to the girl at the state police and she sent it a trooper. She said she couldn't tell me what his charges were, but he was a drug dealer and very stupid one. There was also a guy that worked the gun shows that sold ammo, so he was not an FFL licensed gun dealer. We weren't allowed to carry inside the building, but he showed me his piece one time and made it clear that he would always be carrying. Then one show he accidentally shot his gun off in the building and got arrested. In the storefronts I've dealt with you get all sorts of folks. The most annoying are the I wish 'em a Thurfriker would types that are eager to show off their Taurus 1911 and wish you that some terrors would get froggy. And there's the complete idiots that want a mil-spec stripped lower and swear they can take a Glock through airport security. They're all harmless though. It's just knowing how to deal with people. Edit. Also the other convicted felon that tried to buy a gun from me was half unexpected. I had an old guy and a young guy come up, and the old guy wanted to buy a gun. Unfortunately his eyesight wasn't good, so his very thug looking grandson had to read and help him fill out the paperwork. While this is happening, an undercover state trooper wants me to get the grandson's info, so I do, and it turns out the grandson is clean, and I proceed with the sale. Upon running the old guy though, turns out he forgot he had a felony. Same state trooper came over and took the guy to jail. People seem to treat gun shows like there's no rules, when actually it's a much more controlled environment than any of the gun shops I've worked at. Oh, another one. There was a couple at the counter checking out 1911s. So what does he need to pick up a gun? He will need a FSC, a driver's license, a second proof of residency. The guy speaks to her in Spanish. This was my red flag. He wouldn't speak to me. He would always talk to his girlfriend and she would translate. I pick up a bit of it, and over here I should buy it today, and no green card, so that's all he needs. Yeah, but I don't mean to be out of line. Does he have a green card? No, he just has a driver license. Is that okay? I'm sorry, he needs to be legal in order to buy a gun. They were more understanding than I thought. I sold guns at a pawn shop. It was about 70% of our business. I never lied to anybody, but I worked with a guy who, after calling the FBI for a proceed/deny/delay background check, would lie to the purchaser if he thought it was a straw purchase or it was a gangbanger he didn't like the looks of and considered a risk. The FBI would tell him proceed with the sale, but he would say something like, "Sorry man, they denied you." Funny thing is, no one he ever denied reacted with surprise.